This is just in case of America Newscape. Please join Jeff Griffin, former silver medalist, Olympic basketball player, family man, author of Motivational Speaker, and myself. Jeff has joined us today, suggesting we enjoy the journey. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to America Newscape.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate this opportunity, Justin.
We're thrilled to have you. Let's kick this right off. Please get us started with our own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine, and again, this story isn't about me at all. This story is about the listener. And what the listener may not know, or the person who is watching this, is that I went from 6'1" to 4'7" in an instant.
Wow.
I was a college football player, or I shouldn't say I was a college football player. I played college football as a receiver. And in between seasons, I was painting a barn to earn a little bit of money. And I constructed some scaffolding. I constructed this foundation that I thought was going to hold me in the process. And it was not enough. And it slipped out from underneath me, and I fell 40 feet. And I landed straight-legged. If I was a gymnast, it would have been a perfect landing. I wasn't. I was a painter in between football seasons. And then my legs came up, my back came down, and my L1 vertebrae exploded inside me, leaving me paralyzed from the waist down. And so I went from 6'1" to 4'7". And I literally and figuratively saw things different. And I've learned, Justin, that different isn't always better, but better is always different. And so if we want to make things better, we're going to have to think different. And so I've learned some things throughout my journey, but that's kind of like a little setup for perhaps where we're going and where we want to go today. Because again, this journey isn't about me. This journey is about you, the listener, or the person watching. Because even though I may be physically paralyzed, I believe most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency.
Oh, absolutely. What a blessing to have you today. What a remarkable story that you've gone through. And am I mistaken? You were given a 0% chance to walk or even stand again, correct?
Oh, absolutely. The doctor gave me a life sentence. You could only imagine, somebody who had all his identity wrapped up in his physicality, right? My whole life, ever since I was a little kid, I dreamt about playing football in college. And to have that stripped from me like that, it put a shock on my system. I describe it in my book like it's a heavyweight boxer, just giving me the news that, you know what, you're never going to stand, you're never going to walk, you're never going to move your legs again. The doctor gave me 0% chance of ever standing, walking, or moving. The doctor gave me 0% chance of having kids. He's like, that's the first function to go, last function to come back. And some people gave me a 0% chance of getting married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. And the beauty of it is I've convinced a young lady to say yes. Not only that, I don't know how I've done it, but she stayed with me these last 20 plus years. And she and I together have 4 beautiful kids that we've had naturally. And we've been blessed with a beautiful, beautiful family. And to top it off, Justin, I can now move my legs. I can now get up out of my chair and waddle across the stage, or as I like to say, walk with swagger.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the accident proved a blessing then. I mean, with your family, your children, your wife, it brought it all together for you. And looking at you now and your success and your ability to share that with us, it's really remarkable. And I hope you appreciate how inspiring it is for us.
Well, thank you. In my mind, I was like, well, this is just how I've chosen to do that. But looking back, and it's kind of like the progress of my injury as well. I was given a 0% chance of ever standing, walking, moving again. And so for me, being able to move my legs and to do what I'm able to do right now. In fact, I used to have to get on an airplane, an aisle chair on the airplane, and they'd strap me up and they'd make sure that I wouldn't fall out. And I always look at them like, you know what? I'm already half paralyzed. Why are you guys taking all this precaution? And they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. And so, but now I can get up. You know, I roll my wheelchair down the airway, the plank, whatever that thing called is, and I roll up to the airplane, and then the stewardess or the airline people there, they were helping out. They're like, "Hey, how can I help you?" And I was like, I just jump up out of my chair, and I'm like, "Will you could you help me with my bags?" And they look at me like, "Are you faking this? Are you like just trying to get in front of the line and get on the plane first?" And a lot of people look at me now and are like, why is this guy in a wheelchair? And as human beings, we reject what we don't understand, and we base our possibilities on what we know. And so for that person who sees me today, 25 plus years later, jumping up out of my chair and then waddling to my seat, she's like, okay, what's going on here? There's some rejection of what they see. And so looking back, it's been a slow process. And hindsight's 2020. And hindsight's 2020 vision. And the key that I've found is to develop some 2020 foresight. You know, how can we plan and prepare for that moment? You know, Sir Winston Churchill, and I'm paraphrasing here, says that to every man and woman has been given an opportunity, has been tapped on the shoulder, has been figuratively tapped on the shoulder and given an opportunity to shine and perform. And I always say that when the moment to perform has arrived, the moment for preparation has passed. And so how can we prepare to perform for that moment? Because I was so unprepared for this moment that met me that fateful summer day where I was up 40 feet and the scaffolding just slipped out from underneath me and I came crashing to the ground.
Wow. What in your motivational speaking, is this primarily the message you take to people, or how do you help me? How do you help me put a new spin on my life to help me going forward?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great question. I love that question. In fact, as I mentioned before, right? We as individuals, generally speaking, we reject what we don't understand and we base our possibilities on what we know. And so we'll never understand our power and potential unless we take those steps into the darkness long before we ever see the end. You can envision it as like, I'm standing on this rug. And the rug is a circle, right? And so everything inside this rug, I'm certain it exists. I can touch it. I can see it. I've experienced it. I know for a certainty that this is my reality. But the problem is what we don't realize and what we don't understand is where we are right now was once an uncertainty, was not our reality. Back in the past, it was not that way. And so our choices and our decisions and our thoughts kind of got us to that current place. And so what we have here is we have this, I call it this circle of certainty. And if we want to go above and beyond what we're capable of doing, we've got to take that step outside our circle of certainty. And so most people don't believe they have the capacity. In those people who do say they have the capacity to achieve their dreams and desires, they really don't. Because if the Irish playwright is accurate, George Bernard Shaw, he said that 2% of the population think, 3% of the population think they think, and 95% of the population would rather die than think.
Finally, a Bernard Shaw quote I like.
There you go. That's the only Bernard Shaw quote that I like, even though he's had some help with the encyclopedia and whatnot. But if he is accurate, which I'm experiencing, right, with people I'm talking to. So when I go out there and I go to companies and I work with people and individuals, because their mindset and their reality is, it is what it is, Griff. This is how it is. And they've come up with the excuses and they've come up with their reality such Um, and what the irony is, if that quote is accurate by George Bernard Shaw, really they didn't come up with the reality in the first place. They allowed other people to determine and dictate what their reality is. And so when I show up, in fact, one of the companies that I went and spoke to, their reality was, their boss wanted them to bring in $400 million worth of new money. And their relationship manager was like, this is impossible. We can't do that. And when I came and shared my message, a lot of people think of me as a motivational speaker, but Justin, I like to think of myself as a transformational speaker with a life-altering experience, because I think that change takes place in one of two ways. There's more ways, but I think change happens in one of two ways, and that's an emotional impact, whether it's positive or negative, and then a concentrated, consistent, resilient routine that you can do day in and day out. I call them holy habits and righteous routines. And so my message when I come to these groups and these individuals is, hey, listen, I was given a 0% chance. My reality was such. I had a scar when I woke up from my surgery, Justin. They had cut me open from my belly button to my backbone. They detached my diaphragm, deflated my lung. They cut my rib off to use as supports for my spinal, the spinal cord that had exploded. They cleaned up the shrapnel. They put a 4-inch plate inside. They put 2 screws up on top and 2 screws down below. And then 8 hours later, they sewed me up and stapled me shut. And so every day when I woke up, there was evidence. My reality was there was evidence that I'm never going to walk or stand again. There was evidence that I couldn't feel my legs. There was evidence that what the doctor told me was absolutely real. And so the thing is, if I would have accepted that opinion, I wouldn't be where I am today. And these people, before I come in, they have an opinion. They have made a decision. Their reality, they have painted it. And in fact, what's interesting here, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me just finish this thought, though, if I can. So what I bring to these individuals and to these companies and organizations is I was given a 0% chance. And so when I share the story of I believe there's 3 Ds to every problem. And I think there's 3 Ds that are the foundation of every solution. And so when I come in here and share those 3 Ds with the companies and these individuals, and then I get up out of my chair and stand, they think that is the climax of the story. But what they don't realize is 5 to 10 minutes later, when I walk across the stage, it just blows their mind. And again, it's not pretty, right? That's why I say walk with swagger, because I am waddling. I am struggling to not fall down and to get from point A to point B. It's so much stronger today than it was 10 years ago. But for example, the VP of this company came up to me afterwards and she slapped me on my back and she shook my hand and she's like, Jeff, thank you so much for eliminating all of our excuses. There's no reason why we can't accomplish our $400 million target. And that was last year that I did that. And I just followed up 3 weeks ago to find out what their numbers were last year. And not only did they hit their 400 million, they exceeded it by 135 million.
Wow. Proof in the pudding, so to speak.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It does. It happens all the time. And here's the situation, Justin. We've all created this wall that we've put up in front of us. And it's our reality. It's what we see and it's what we've, been taught. I've been to Kentucky where this young girl at the age of 14 believed her reality was by the time she's 16, she's going to have a couple of kids, she's going to be on welfare, and that's how she's going to live out the rest of her life. And then I met another kid who's in California, who his reality was, that corner over there, I'm going to deal drugs and I'm going to be shot and I'm going to be killed. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's my reality. And a lot of times it happens because we get what we focus on. And if I can, I'd love to share. I don't know if you ever heard this before, Justin, where people are like, "Hey, Griff, it is what it is." Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, it's a pretty sad statement, actually.
It is, isn't it, right? It is what it is. And I'm like, okay, I've heard that before. In fact, when I went and spoke at the Air Force Academy, our military cadets are being taught by some of the generals who use that phrase. It is what it is. And these guys are great, great individuals, and they're doing great things for our country. But unfortunately, we still have some limiting beliefs, within our leaders. And I was in Tokyo one time, and I was with a group of individuals, and they taught me some great things. And one of the individuals had laid down a few tracks of music, and he's from Texas. He's African American, a great guy. Love the guy, and he's jamming out to some music, and I'm like, "Hey, what you listening to? I'd love to listen to that." And he's like, "Utah," because I'm from Utah. They gave me my name, Utah. You won't like this music. I use language that you don't use. And I'm like, "Oh, are you listening to angry music?" And he's like, "Utah, it is what it is. You don't understand." And I'm like, okay, so he's trying to protect me. So the very, very next day, I roll down to breakfast, and he's jamming out to his music again. I'm like, I look at my imaginary watch, and I'm like, isn't it too early to be listening to this music? And he looks up, and he's like, "Utah, it is what it is." And I was about to just roll on by and leave it as is, but then I'm like, no, I had one of those divine downloads, as I call them, the Star Trek experiences. And it hit me. I know it didn't come from myself, and so I turned to him and I shared the thought and the impression that came to my mind, and I'm like, "You're right. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to be. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to be." And that's probably one of the greatest messages that I love to share with people is just because it is doesn't mean it has to be. And I believe that every problem under the sun has a solution, or it has none. If there be one, hurry and find it. If there be none, never mind it. Justin, we spend way too much time on the problem, discussing the problem, giving it a face, giving it a name, giving it all sorts of information, and we spend very little energy and time on the solution. And I think that if we just switch that around, so many great things could happen in our lives, around our lives, and with our lives. And so that's my message. That's my mission, is to help people understand that they are the solution to impossible. That we have it inside of us to find these answers, to find these solutions. And instead of just focusing on the problems, like, we've had a psychological tsunami just course through our country. And it is just destroying companies, it is destroying counties, it's destroying citizens and companies as alike. And so it's amazing, what we're going to do here. How are we going to pick up the pieces? How are we going to dust ourselves off? And how are we going to prepare for what's ahead? Because this moment right now has passed, right? When the moment to perform has arrived, the moment for preparation has passed. If you haven't prepared for this moment, it is eating you up, chewing you out, and spitting you out, right? Unless you're prepared for it. And then again, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to not just survive, but thrive in these uncertain times because of their preparation that they've done in the past. And so, Justin, we can focus on what we can do, or we can focus on what we can't do. And I choose to focus on what we can do, because I've learned that by doing that, the impossible turns into the possible.
Wow, Jeff. The opportunity is upon us. I mean, what a remarkable opportunity that lies ahead for all of us, and we either choose to grasp it or we just pull back into a cocoon of some sort. You know, this is a beautiful place to leave our audience today, Jeff. I hope you, well, you should promise to join us again down the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll come back. I'm telling you. I love. We've just barely scratched the surface here, Justin. We've just scratched the surface, and some people are like, well, shoot. How did he get to that point where he fell off the barn, and then how did he pick himself up? Because that's really the key, right? How do you pick yourself back up when a major setback or a difficult challenge has been placed before you? And yeah, absolutely be happy to come back, share a few things. But, until then, people can go and look up my website or other places to find some of this information. But Justin, I love what you're doing and sharing the good word.
Well, I'll tell you, everybody, all the links to Jeff's websites, his Facebook, his store. He actually sells books. He sells tapes. It's all going to be in the read more of this video. I'm glad he's promised to come back, and we will hold him to this. This has been Justin Case and Jeff Griffin sharing a glimpse into some remarkable possibilities. Thanks for joining us. Please remember, all that additional information and links are provided in the video's Read More, and to support humanity everywhere. Plus, please consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you.